Catastrophe is coming. Demographic crisis in Japan? Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. Since ancient times, Japan is considered to be a small and densely populated country. The area of the islands is really small, especially when compared with the vast America, but objectively it is not so tiny. But this overcrowding is greatly exaggerated. The cities are cramped, but you can remember the hustle on Fifth Avenue, and the stereotype can be strongly shaken. In addition, the situation with demography in Japan is such that it is time to talk, if not about catastrophe, then at least about a serious problem. In today's video, we and Smart is the New Sexy will try to understand the true scale of this trouble. Some statistics. Well, what can I say? Here I will start immediately with kinda sad news. The birth rate in Japan is falling. Compared with the 70s, when more than 2 million little Japanese were born, there is an avalanche-like decline. By the middle of the 1980s, the number of infants was 1.5 million, and in 20 years, only 1.1 million. If this trend continues, the population of Japan in 30 years will be reduced by about a third. I feel like after all these, there is no reason for optimism. The most recent evidence suggests that the Japanese continue to be unenthusiastic about parenting. Over the past year, the net population decline was 300,000 people. The problem has attracted the attention of the government. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said that it is becoming a national disaster. Statistics is quite abstracted science, so no matter how difficult it is to imagine, the average Japanese woman gives birth to 1.4 children. Now, the country's leadership has set the task of increasing this figure to 1.8, but according to these figures, it's probably not going to be easy. The complexity of the problem. Let's then stop with these strange figures that cause yawning and move on to more vivid pictures, acceptable in the analysis of the causes of fertility decline in Japan. We will talk about common problems for many countries, as well as some national specifics. Mass character of this phenomenon allows us to talk about sexual counter-revolution, which has a culturological nature. At the same time, it is necessary to dwell on the economic aspect of the crisis, since on the one hand it was the result of budget turmoil, and on the other, itself can cause a huge trouble. It seemed to me at first that the reluctance of the Japanese to marry or just to have affairs should not concern anyone except themselves. But the current youth will someday grow old. Who will work then in some 30 or 40 years if the current young Japanese are too lazy to do what their parents were meticulously doing? Laziness. Japanese are considered to be workaholics. In a period of tremendous growth of the national economy, they were able to prove to the world their ability to work hard and carefully, to live modestly, and to rest a little. Of course, the desire for a high culture of work is a folk trait. Although 100 years ago, Japanese watches were sold by weight, and in the 60s, radio equipment and cars imported to the United States and Europe caused great doubts among consumers for their fragility. With all their hard work, the inhabitants of the islands become rare idlers when they have such an opportunity. The same applies to family life, which, as everyone knows, is also a job. You need to take care of your spouse and children, spend time and energy on them, worry and sympathize. These prospects are increasingly less attractive to Japanese youth, surrounded by high-tech means of pleasure. About 5% of the surveyed boys and girls generally said that they have a hobby much more interesting than love. Just imagine that. Career. For example, a few decades ago, the position of the installer on the Japanese assembly lines of radio equipment was available only to unmarried women. Employers believed, and not without reason, that family life makes a woman scattered, and quality suffers from this. Now, the women themselves try to sharpen all their efforts on a career. It is very difficult to get an education, to gain respect in the team, to become a skilled worker. Give up all your achievements, go on maternity leave, give birth to a child, and then educate him for several years continuously? It doesn't matter what kind of hieroglyph indicates a negative answer in Japanese. They are all very polite there, but in English it would probably sound like, "Kiss my ass, dude." Japanese celibacy. This newly formed problem has nothing to do with national characteristics. Unlike Europe, in Japan the intimate side of life was not considered shameful. The
The traditional culture of Nippon has never shown a sanctimonious attitude to sex. Erotic movies pierce the poetic forms of haiku and tanks, and figurines of bone and jade are colorfully described the most unimaginable stories. Contemporary Japanese youth, by the way, enjoyed watching the amorous adventures on the TV series and anime heroes, but they don't seek to feel the emotions depicted on the screen. Hey, guys, what's wrong with you there? It's exhausting and boring. According to the Japan National Institute of Population and Social Security Research, over 60% of men and almost half of women of the most reproductive active age, 18 to 34 years, do not have a permanent partner. 45% of adult girls whose age has not exceeded 24 years even disgust at the thought of sex. Also, the situation doesn't look better among married couples. The survey showed that almost 45% of married people ignore the intimate side of life, believing that it is not worth to spend any effort on it. It turns out, the more people have all sorts of advanced technological stuff, the more infantile they become. Public debt and old people. By the beginning of last year, Japan's public debt exceeded the quadrillion yen. It's about $8,654 billion. The question arises, who will give the money back? The country is rapidly aging. It also happens because of the high quality of national medicine. With an average life expectancy of 83 years, soon a typical Japanese will be considered an elderly person, and that's an understatement. The same problem exists in many other developed countries. And if, for example, Germany tries to solve it at the expense of migrant workers, although it is not yet known how this strategy will turn out, the state programs of Sweden or Denmark are focused on increasing their own fertility, and this experience can be called successful. The high level of social guarantees encourages married couples and single mothers to raise their offspring without thinking about material problems. The practice of family allowances, adopted in France, also contributes to large families. Many countries do not skimp on the creation of new nurseries and kindergartens, as well as on significant budget expenditures in the financing of gender policy, and the result is not long in coming. I wonder, will Japan follow this path? Time is running. If you liked the video, please push the like button and subscribe to our channel. There's lots of interesting stuff ahead.